So we are going to have a session right now that we called Bold Ideas, right? So this is a reminder to our speakers that are making their way over here. We called this session Bold Ideas because and then later on we have something called From Talk to Action. Because we said, this is great. I'm glad everyone's talking. We're talking about the skills. We're talking about the areas. We're talking about what it's going to take, what we can build on to meet the challenges of the moment. But we want to share some bold and actionable policy ideas on what is needed to coordinate and align across sectors. We heard a lot of that. We need to coordinate. We need to build on what we've already learned to ensure, again, that Canada has the right skills in the right place at the right time. So we have 3 thought leaders who we're going to invite on stage, each with a distinct perspective on how investments in skills and training can contribute to a resilient Canadian economy. Each speaker will share a policy idea on a priority issue, and they'll engage with each other and the audience in a discussion. Hopefully by now you've figured out how to do Slido, right, on your phone. So please keep the ideas and questions coming in. To moderate this session, we're thrilled to have Vanmala Subramaniam. Am I saying your name right? No, I'm not. Yes. And I said to Vanmala over the lunch break, I said, gosh, every time I see your byline in the Globe, I'm like, I have to read what Vanmala has been writing. So we're thrilled to have you here. So come on up. We also have Kaylie Tiessen, who's the new chief economist at the Canadian Shield Institute, Alfred Burgesson from Tribe Network, and Bobbie Racette. And we're thrilled to have all 3 of you here. Thank you so much. And we are really excited to hear about these policy ideas. Thank you.
Testing. Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Trisha Vericigo, for having me. It's great to be here. Good conference so far. I've already learned so much. So yeah, as Trisha mentioned, I am with the Globe and Mail. I cover labor, immigration, employer-employee relationships and trends and things like that. But I actually am very excited to hear from these panelists, and I'm gonna introduce them. Before that, though, I just wanted to explain what the session is, what Bold Ideas is. We're basically going to get panelists to present sort of one solution-oriented idea that addresses the question of how Canada can make sure we have people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. Essentially a conversation about what I think is the skills gap. So on my far right, we have Bobbie Racette. She's the founder and president of Virtual Gurus. Virtual Gurus is a leading North American talent place platform that has empowered thousands of professionals and generated over 15 million Canadian in wages for underserved communities. Thanks, Bobbie, for being here. And we also have Alfred Burgesson, founder and CEO of Tribe Network. Tribe Network supports Black, Indigenous, and people of color pursuing entrepreneurship. Alfred has advised community groups, nonprofits, government bodies, and other national leaders. Right next to me, we have Kaylie Tiessen. She's the chief economist at the Canadian Shield Institute. It's a next-generation policy studio focusing on strengthening Canada's sovereignty and driving economic transformation. So thank you all for being here. I'm just going to repeat sort of the question at hand, which we're going to hear your bold ideas off. So what is one idea, and maybe Kaylie, I'll start with you. What is one idea for how Canada can make sure we have people with the right skills in the right place at the right time?
All right. I'm so happy to be here today to talk about this. We've been having this conversation for a long time, I think, skills. I've heard a couple of times today people say, we've been talking about this for 20 years. So here's my bold question. What if we have the right skills, but the labor market is not delivering the right jobs? So imagine a world, you probably already live in this world if you're in this room, but imagine you have a different job. Imagine a world where the skills you have are recognized by your employer. They're nurtured. They're actually nurtured by your manager and utilized on the job every day. You're not exploited, but your skills are utilized every day. Sadly, that's not always the case. Too often, there's an inconsistency between the skills people actually possess and how those skills are utilized or not in the workplace. And this disconnect actually leaves an immense amount of value on the table and stifles personal growth, and it stifles economic growth. So, what workers in Canada, here's my bold idea. Workers in Canada are actually already highly skilled, but many of us are not being utilized in a way that grows our economy or fulfills us as individuals. Workers in Canada are credentialed up the wazoo. That's the technical term in this room, right? Like, we're all credentialed up the wazoo. We have degrees, we have certificates, we have references from the unpaid work that we've done in order to get proof of our skills on our resume. We're constantly taking extra courses to make sure we don't fall behind. I've taken 3 extra credentials this year alone. Probably many of you in this room have too, or advised your clients to do so. We're capable of learning, and we prove that we're capable of learning every single day, but still we're told we don't have the right skills. It's actually quite exhausting. We learned this morning that Canada's overqualification rate is 40%. 2 in 5 workers are overqualified for their job. We learned that Canadians earn lower wages than workers in several other OECD countries with the same skill level, again, suggesting that better opportunities could be created. Or Canadians are underpaid, or maybe both. Both is possible. Young workers face the highest unemployment rate. We've heard that today. Immigrants, both recent and long tenured, come to Canada with PhDs, medical training, skilled trades, and they're not allowed to put those skills to work. They're actually blocked from putting their skills to work. So the bold idea is, what if we put the systems in place to actually utilize the skills we already have in our labor market? Thinking about assessment tools, thinking about pathways for people to be to receive gap training for the things that they're missing. Instead of thinking of it as a whole new degree or a whole new piece of training, it's like, oh, you just have to learn how to use ChatGPT. It's actually not that hard. And if we turned it on its head, talked about how skilled we are and how capable we are of learning, then filling those gaps might not seem so insurmountable.
Thank you very much, Kaylie. I'll turn to Alfred next. What is your one bold idea?
Test, test. Hello. Can I actually stand at the podium there?
Yeah, you can do anything.
Okay. Oops. Taking up a lot of space here. So my name is Alfred, and it's great to be with you all today. I learned that I got invited after one of the folks that works at Future Skills Center heard me speak at the Public Policy Forum Awards earlier this year. And at this awards, I don't know, was anyone in this room there earlier this year? There's a few people, okay. All right, so they know what's coming. At this awards, I received the Emerging Leader Award, and I wanted to do something a little bit different to kind of get the energy in the room going. It is after lunch. I saw a few kind of sleepy faces, so I'm going to try to pick up the energy in here a little bit. And so if you would indulge with me, as a basketball coach and player, one thing you do to bring a team together is you try to create a sense of unity and rhythm, right? And sometimes you do that through whether it's a chant or perhaps a clapping kind of motion together. And so I want to do something before I get going into my comments, and this is a concept called 2 claps. With a team, if you're trying to huddle and get everyone on the same page, you do 2 claps, and it creates a sense of rhythm and togetherness. So when I say 2 claps, we're all going to clap together 2 times. All right? 2 claps. 2 claps. 2 claps. Awesome, that worked. Noel, you're welcome. You know, there's someone else I wanted to say thank you Wendy's comments earlier this morning when she was articulating some of the concerns around wokeness or the how it's been so politicized, you put into words things that have been on my heart, and to be honest, it's been a hard kind of few months, and to hear you speak so eloquently about that was really a lot of gratitude for that. So can we give 2 claps for Wendy? 2 claps. 2 claps. Thank you, Wendy. All right, so my bold idea, I'm going to start by telling a story, and then I'll just get right to the bold idea. I run an entrepreneurship center in Halifax called Tribe Network. We work with Black and other racialized entrepreneurs across the country. We provide mentorship coaching, grant funding to early stage entrepreneurs, mostly in the tech sector. And we try to connect them with existing federal programs, whether it's Elevate IP or MyTax or Scale AI, things like that. We had a founder who we got introduced to a couple of years ago from Newfoundland. His name was Collins. He just arrived in Newfoundland months prior to getting introduced to us. And Collins was in the computer science program at Memorial University. He immigrated from Nigeria, and he was struggling in a new environment. He was struggling with learning and picking up kind of in a classroom setting. He was really just struggling with learning. And so Collins is a builder, and Collins decided to build his own personalized AI tutor. Collins went from being a student who was failing to now being considered a dean student. He built this tool called ScanSolve. You can look it up on Google or in the App Store. It exists right now. He built this tool when he was 20 years old, and it's now being used by 5 million people around the world for personalized learning. That inspired us, and he won our Entrepreneur of the Year award last year. He solved the problem for himself and his classmates, and now millions of people around the world are using this tool, ScanSolve. Whether you're a grade 6 student or a master's level student, based off of your aptitude and your learning style, this personalized tutor will actually help you learn. Instead of giving you the answer, it's coaching you to get to the answer yourself. That inspired us at Tribe Network to build a program called the AI Youth Fellowship, with support from the Rita Hall Foundation, as well as Foundation for Black Communities. We launched 2 cohorts this summer. We did the university cohort, essentially bringing in university students for a 8 to 12-week program around AI. It included elements of privacy, security, ethics, and actually building with tools and learning how to prompt. We worked with 50 students for this university pilot, and this fall we'll be doing high school students as well. A key part of this program is we're not just bringing in experts to share with you privacy and what tools to use, et cetera. There's a capstone project aligned with this. And so every student who's a part of this program will actually build a tool and will solve a problem that they have with AI. Okay, I'm just gonna go right to the big, bold idea because I feel like I'm taking up a lot of space. I believe we need to approach AI literacy as a nation-building project. There was a recent Public Policy Forum report that came out that talked about how the Major Projects Office could adopt a sovereign health data cloud as part of a nation-building project. And I think that's a bold thing for us to do, which we should do. Now, we need doctors, nurses, and a society that can layer in AI to be able to have, predictive modeling, and, that may lead to preventative treatments, preventative healthcare, et cetera, in the future. Earlier this morning, someone mentioned AI is not about one industry. This is something that needs to be applied to all industries. And so I believe AI literacy needs to be adopted and thought about as a nation-building initiative, number one. And one way to increase learning and skill development in this area is to implement some sort of skills credit for all workers. This is something that could be, and students, this could something that could be driven through education institutions, through private corporations. And I'll share an example and then I'll be done, which is years ago, RBC Future Launch actually had a skills, some sort of skills credit where students were able to access, I believe, $500 to take on a new credential or micro-credential of some sort. And I believe that if we don't get our students and our workforce people adopting and learning how to use AI, we will be left behind. There's good and bad to AI. In order to minimize the risk, we need to know how to use it. And if people don't know how to use it, then the risk of catastrophe is probably greater. In China, earlier this year, they had passed some sort of bill about adopting AI in schools. Just this past September, K-12 AI literacy is now mandatory. And so I'll just leave it on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Alfred.
Good job, buddy.
Bobbie, go ahead. What is your one bold idea? And then we'll get to questions.
All right. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Tanzi. So, when I was asked to speak at this, and I knew that this was the question I was going to be asked, I'll be honest. When I read it completely different, and I started asking my wife, do I have dyslexia or something? Because I don't think I'm reading this the way it should be read. The way I read it is, how do we make sure that the people with no skills or wrong skills are in the right place at the right time? So I'm going to take it back to a little bit of storytelling. I'm Indigenous. My grandparents and my second generation grandparents are all residential school survivors. My mom's from Labret. She was stolen away as well. I was 6 years old when I got diagnosed with severe polymorphous light eruption, which means I'm severely allergic to the light and ultraviolet lights in the sun. And I'm Indigenous, and I'm being raised by queer parents. Nobody gave me any belief. Nobody believed in me. So I was raised up thinking, okay, I was homeschooled. I had nobody believe in me. I was being raised by queer parents in the 80s, and I had a disease that made me look like an alien. Nobody believed in me. So at 18, I finally left home, and I had no education, didn't finish a grade 12 because I was bullied. Nobody believed in me. I couldn't go to school. I was bullied because I looked like an alien. I was a person of color, Indigenous, with sores all over my body, being raised by two queer parents. So I left, and I ended up getting a job and ended up working in oil and gas. Nobody believed in me, and I stood at the bottom of the scale thinking, how am I going to work my way up? And I had to prove myself 10 times as hard with no education, queer parents, Indigenous, and sores all over my body. And nobody believed in me, so I kept going. So fast forward, I was laid off. And again, nobody would hire me because they didn't believe in me. I would leave places applying for work and hear my resume hitting the bottom of a trash can because of who I am. So I got tattoos to clear up my body and to hide the sores. I started changing who I was, thinking, maybe I've got to be somebody I'm not. But you know what? Nobody believed in me. So I set out to create my own mission, and I started virtual gurus on my own story. Nobody would hire me, and the only way I could do it, and I had no skills. I had no education. And the only way was for me to get out there and do it myself and figure it out and prove everybody wrong. So fast forward, and I can certainly get into that later, I am now the first Indigenous woman that has closed a Series A funding round. I am also now the first Indigenous female woman in my entire family that has a Harvard degree. And I am now the first Indigenous woman to make a successful exit here pretty soon. And so when you ask me, how can Canada help people like me? It's believe. How can you lift us up? How can you look at people like me and say, how can I lift this person up? And that answer is to believe, right? So believe in me, believe in people like me, lift us up, give us resources. we will take it, we will help, we will be there, but we need your help. And so when you ask what is my idea on how Canada can make sure that we have people with the right skills at the right place at the right time? Believe in the people that don't have that. Believe in the people like me that can't be lifted up. Believe in people like me who are here in front of all of you, showing my story and sharing my story, because one day we just want to inspire everybody, right? So my answer and my idea is just believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, that's excellent. I'm going to wait till we get a bunch of audience questions here, but in the meantime, I have a couple of questions. Maybe I'll just start with what you said, Kaylie, around utilizing systems that we already have in place to sort of fit people into the right spots in the workforce. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? So what tools do we already have in place, and kind of why are they not working? I know that's a massive question, but maybe you can just give us a bit of a broad summary of that.
Sure. So I think what we end up looking for is a list of credentials. How have you proven that you can do this thing that I am, as an employer, looking for you to be able to do, and you have to have proved it already. Saying that on a resume means you have to have done it already, but there are skills, competencies, abilities that folks have, and it might just not be possible to prove it on your resume. How do we actually develop a system that assesses those skills so that we're matching people and understanding who they are as a whole person and not just one piece of education or micro-credential in order to fit them into jobs that exist, or actually move them into a job that might better meet their skill set. One thing that I've thought about a lot is, I talked a little bit about new immigrants coming to Canada not being utilized. Gig workers spend hours of unpaid time every day waiting for work opportunities to show up on their app. They are ready and available to work, but their algorithm has them waiting in order to optimize the urgency with which they'll take the next gig. And that means they'll probably take it at a lower wage. That's not optimizing anyone's skill. Even though that person is probably highly skilled, they're stuck in this other job instead. You can think about apprenticeships as well. Apprenticeships, there are thousands of people in this country who are taking the college-level apprenticeship program, but they don't actually have access to the pathway that gets them into becoming a fully fledged journey person. That's not because they're not skilled, it's because employers aren't actually providing the pathway anymore, one that used to exist. So how do we build a pathway so people can actually get there? Those folks are skilled, and they have the ability to learn and develop the additional skills that they need in order to be a journey person, but we're not providing that pathway. We just keep on talking about how we have a skills shortage. Like, let's provide those pathways. And then when it comes to assessing for skill, ability, instead of just a credential, then we're actually looking at a whole person and figuring out how we can move people into jobs that exist, or actually build businesses that create the jobs that people want so that we can have a higher functioning labor market. It would actually also lead us to have a higher level of productivity and higher well-being as well.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kaylie. That's really interesting. This is either for Bobbie or Alfred, but my assessment, at least, I came to Canada 20 years ago from Malaysia, is that employers almost lack the will or to actually want to, as you mentioned, Bobbie, take a chance on people who might not be credentialed or look a certain way, or, compared to what they're used to typically hiring. We've had in the last 5 years a wave of a movement trying to change this, and this movement seems to have, I've written about this quite a bit, stalled. How do we what's the employer side of this? Is it education? Is it unconscious bias training, more of it, which I'm very skeptical about. What is it that you can do on the employer side to make them take a chance on people who might not be from, a conventional background, but are talented and, yeah. Do you want to go? Yeah. Bobbie, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, I can take a stab at it. I think you'd be better at answering it. But one of the things that I think is important to note is that, as long as employers started understanding that, underserved communities, for example, they're rich in potential, but most hiring systems are built to exclude them. So how can we build our systems to include them? And I think that's the answer that we really all have to sit down and think, right? How do we include? And I would like to say that I see a lot more of it happening now. I speak all over the world right now, and I'm seeing so much more inclusivity coming out versus when I started talking 5 years ago. And I think that we've gone a long way. We've come a long way. I think we have a lot more way to come. So I think it's a question of how do we build our systems to include them more.
Mm-hmm.
I'll chime in.
Yeah.
At Tribe, we probably have a staff of about 15 people. And I would say out of 15, 5 came from actual postings we put out there, and the others have come from people demonstrating that I can provide you value. And so when I speak to university students, or whenever I'm speaking in front of a room of university students or youth, I'm always talking about it from the lens of, everyone is going in with a resume, a cover letter, and hoping to answer all the questions right. What if you came with a case study or a portfolio of something that you've done that brings this company value today, right? I think when I think about my team, those 10 people that we brought on came with that mindset of, I don't see a role, but I see ways in which I can bring value to you, and here's how. And so I don't know if we can change the mind of employers in Canada to accept these folks more, but I do think we can change the way in which we perhaps educate young people or immigrants about how to show their value to employers, which I think the way of just having a good resume and being able to talk in an interview is perhaps not as much of a differentiator anymore, as opposed to sharing something that brings value to that employer today that maybe they didn't have a line of sight on.
So really sort of showing up at a job interview in a way that's innovative and different from making yourself the standout candidate.
That's right,
and training people to do that rather than just falling back on whatever credentials or lack of credentials that they have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm going to take a couple of audience questions from Slido. There is one here that says, maybe Kaylie, this would be for you. Social capital is essential for a career. That means job referrals, advice from friends or mentors, but StatScan reports a decrease in social capital. How can we reverse this?
Not an easy question. If you think about all the ways we've all felt more excluded and sort of more like homebodies or not interacting with the world in the same way we used to, that means there is sort of less effort being put into helping other people access that social capital that you might have. And I think it really is just one person at a time, making the effort, going the extra mile for someone, doing something that, maybe 30 years ago, my parents would have done it every single day. Just introducing your friend's kid to the employer down the street, helping someone understand what they might need to do differently on their resume or in how they're presenting at an interview. And nobody has time for that anymore unless we each individually make time. I don't know the answer to how we make each of us less busy. If I did, I would have stopped working at 5 p.m. yesterday, and I did not. So I don't know the answer for that, but overall, we each have to make the effort to make those connections. And I think it has to be personal instead of always online. Like, it's one thing to introduce someone on LinkedIn, and it's something very different to say, hey, come to this event with me today so that I can introduce you to all the folks that I interact with every day. We have some new policy associates, policy research associates in our office, and we're just taking them with us everywhere. When I started in my career 20 years ago, my boss took me to every meeting that he went to, and I was always shocked, like, why? I don't have any experience. Why would you take me to this thing and actually let me speak to the MP or the minister? But that's the way you actually develop the skill, and it means that we all have to make that effort. It's not like a policy solution so much as it is, or a technology solution. Those exist, so much as it is just all of us making that effort.
Can I chime in on that as well?
Yeah, sure, Alfred.
So there's some data that's showing young people are actually retreating the fastest from social media currently. And they're seeking these IRL experiences in real life. And this is actually leading to a lot of things like run clubs and what they're calling third spaces. I know years ago, I think back in like 2016, I was a part of a group in Halifax called the Halifax Social Network. And we would host these informal networking events. And at each one, we would invite a couple of speakers, 2 or 3 speakers, to share their story. It's not to make a pitch on a business, kind of an informal networking environment, but we would invite people from our local connector program called, it was led by the Halifax Partnership. And so I do think that part of that social capital needs to be built in person. And I think some of that comes from informal kind of networking environments where you have folks that are connectors with a Rolodex being in those spaces and building relationships, but also kind of helping folks connect to those who they're looking to connect to. So I think you're right, though. Like having that in real life networking, that's not like put a suit on and go to this event, is important. I think a lot of young people are like yearning for that right now.
I love to, the IRL, like to actually that has become so novel to have IRL experiences, to be a part of a team, to participate in all sorts of different things. And that's where you interact with people who don't think the same way as you, interact with people who can offer you opportunities that your own network wouldn't offer, and that happens in person, and then the social media or other sites can supplement that.
Yeah, I'm quite a introvert. When I'm not out doing this stuff, I'm at my campsite with my dogs and my wife, literally like watching a fire all day. Like that's what I would prefer to do, but. One of the things is everybody in this room, we need to stop gatekeeping and start green lighting, right? And to green light is, introduce somebody. So I have an effort, I have a goal that I have to do, and it's an effort that I do at every event I go to. I need to at least make 5 introductions in some sort of a way. As Indigenous folks, especially being from the underserved market, who are really, really not very sociable, and not only that, but asking for money or intros is trauma for us. So how do you do that? And so I take anywhere from 2 to 5 underserved people with me to an event, and I encourage to introduce them and talk to them, get them out there networking a little bit more. And, the more green lighting we do, the easier it is for the social impact to come in.
Yeah, I think we're talking about a theme about navigating systems, right? I think for a lot of new entrants into the job market or hopefuls, navigating systems in Canada can be very intimidating, especially if you're a new immigrant. We actually have a question related to that. Someone asks, bureaucratic systems here are so complex and hard to navigate for those who need it most. How do we address this? And I think that's a really good question, because I think certain people who find this easier will know what website to go to, what career center to go to, who to talk to, might have a good guidance counselor at a private school, benefit from certain privileges that allow them to enter and thrive in a job market more than others. How do you narrow this gap between people who can navigate that system and people who can't? Anyone want to jump in?
I think there's a technology solution for this. And hard work on the back end in a technology solution makes it easy to navigate on the front end for clients. But if we don't put the hard work on the back end to make it work well, then we just end up with silos, which I think is what we have now. Do we go to federal government for certain services, provincial government for certain services? There's many different websites that folks need to be able to navigate, and we don't have a one-stop shop. Sometimes we talk about different countries offering, if you're, let me think about this. Okay, you have a new baby and you get a basket and it comes to your hospital room and you're automatically signed up for all of the stuff your baby needs. Daycare, birth certificate, social insurance number, all in one place. What if we had systems that worked like that for everything instead of just, we don't have that for babies, there are other countries that have this for babies. But what if we had a system that operated in that way? So we put the hard work in at the back end, behind the scenes, so that it's much easier to navigate. Right now, you're Googling, hoping to land the proper website. Artificial intelligence may be delivering you the proper information, or it may deliver you the wrong information. Like you might not even know that you have the wrong information. And so we need to build systems, online systems that are capable of providing that service, and also in person or over the phone systems that supplement the online piece of the puzzle. And that actually means just hiring more people who can provide the service instead of only relying on technology.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. I think this is a startup waiting to happen to help with this. So anybody in the crowd want to start a startup, there's a great idea.
We should partner.
Doug?
There's a question specifically for Bobbie. What skills training opportunities were most impactful in your own journey?
I think, if I look back through my journey, my journey's only been about 7 years, that I from start to close to 8 years now. I would think it was trusting mentorship. Like I said, being Indigenous, we come from a lot of generational trauma, but we also come from a lot of financial trauma. And I've turned it around to the fact that entrepreneurship is now medicine for me. So I've been able to really, really learn a lot from my mentors, peer-to-peers, but mentors, coaches, and really not being afraid to learn and reach out to ask for learning. When I started, I had no idea what I was doing, and so being able to put myself through programs at like Harvard, for example, or INSEAD was because I needed to learn how to run a company that understood about diversity and understood that. And so, I think a lot of it was really the mentorship. I probably wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have the advisors or mentorship believing in me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the other sort of related questions here that I find interesting is someone asks, many racialized and recent immigrants are entrepreneurs, exactly like you, Bobbie, but the risk can outweigh the benefit. Is there a role that governments can play to make sure that that risk doesn't outweigh the benefit? Is there a role for a third party in sort of boosting and helping recent immigrants who are entrepreneurs?
I do. Government talks a lot about giving people like me funding. Well, you think I've applied for probably well over 200 grants and have been denied every single one of them. So let's start with talking the walk, walking the talk. I get that wrong all the time. Let's start with that, right? So if we're going to talk about government funding, we're going to talk about giving funding to people like me, then let's really do it. Let's action it. Let's not just say we're going to do it to look good. Let's do it, right? And I think it starts there because we need funding. A lot of our programs, like let's say IFIs and such, Indigenous Foundations, investment programs, we're all funding our own people. I'm part of the Indigenous Tech Circle, and we're funding our own people because it's really difficult for us to get funding. So, for me, I think it's just taking a back step and really like let's walk that talk.
Mm-hmm.
Can I chime in on that?
Yeah, sure.
I would challenge you to say, okay, so there are a ton of government, supports for startups. They are going out there. I'm not sure they're reaching entrepreneurs that look like you or I. And a lot of that has to do with entrepreneurs not having access to safe spaces or mentors or coaches that truly understand their value proposition to support them in achieving and getting those grants.
True. But we have over 300 members in our Indigenous Tech Circle. And how does that answer? All of these are pre-revenue, maybe super early stage. How does it answer that 98% of them are being denied funding, right? That's what I'm getting at is how do we get more? I do agree, though. I think we need to get more out there and educate a little bit more and have programs such as yours to help with that. Hence, me being the chair of the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation, we're doing just that. But how do we do more of that to get them prepared for that, right? So,
No, I agree with the point you're making. I think that we are further removed from the spaces where capital is flowing. In general, without making it a racialized thing, I also think we need more private actors in the Canadian entrepreneurship ecosystem. We are over-reliant on government almost in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I think that's kind of the major difference between us and the US is in the US, there's a lot more private kind of risk capital available. And in Canada, we're not as willing to make those risky investments. There are a lot of kind of structural things we can do to increase that flow, and some of that may include mandating pension funds to invest in Canada. There's many levers that we could pull to kind of unlock some capital, but we have not done that yet.
Yeah, it seems that it sort of, to me, relates to the risk averseness we have in Canada. Even the private sector tends to have this, and it relates back to either funding or hiring, or, there's a certain formulaic approach that we tend to take to all those things, and we're ending up in a place where the right people are, still not in, the right jobs. We have about 6 minutes left. I'm going to ask a question, then I'll take a question from the audience. I wanted to ask you, Kaylie, about credentialing. I think in previous sessions they sort of discussed this, but do you have any specific ideas around how you can match people with existing international credentials with jobs in terms of, what specific, say, provincial governments can do more of? Or is that something we can do more of? Because we're really lagging when it comes to people who already have the credentials that might not be Canadian being matched to jobs that they can probably do, and they just can't figure out how to get themselves there. Yeah,
I was actually speaking to an entrepreneur in this space a couple of weeks ago who does assessments of skills, competencies, and abilities. And then in addition to that, builds processes to help recognize skills, competencies, abilities, credentials that exist, and builds the pathway that gets you from, I have a credential from Malaysia, here's where I'm overqualified for this job in to become a nurse, let's say, in Canada, and here's where I haven't met the skills that allow me to become a nurse in Canada. So instead of going through the entire nursing program all over again, they have done the hard work of figuring out what's missing. And then we build a program to help them get the piece that's missing so they can move into the job instead of having someone have to go through that daunting task. And it means then that you're assessing, like I've mentioned, the whole person and not just whatever is on their resume. Or if you don't understand what exists in a nursing credential in any country around the world, when you actually have to do the hard work of discovering what that is, translating. I understand that it is very, very challenging to do that. But what if we did it and then we actually had enough nurses? What if we did it and we actually had enough doctors? And what if we did it and we actually had enough personal support workers? And then we had the amount of Uber drivers needed to also service the community and all of the needs of people who are taking rides every day without making it so that job is so bad that people can barely survive. That's what the economic transformation of doing this would actually mean.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very interesting. last question to any of you, really. It's about informal mentorship. I think we've been talking about sort of informal mentorship and helping others. Someone says here that it perpetuates sort of existing bias and hegemony in a workplace. Like how do you overcome that if you have, say, how do you overcome sort of that internal bias when you're trying to mentor someone into a certain place?
So the question is, how do you overcome bias when mentoring someone internally?
So when you're an informal mentor, when you're an informal, sorry, the question sort of disappeared and he or she phrased it really well. But when you have internal bias yourself and you're trying to mentor someone, how do you guard against that to make sure that you're not just perpetuating the same system and hierarchy in a workplace and you're actually bringing in someone new?
Great question. I'll share what we do, which is every employee, we try to match them with an external mentor. So it's not necessarily happening internally, but for example, if our marketing director is seeking skills or insights in a part of the industry that they currently are not exposed to, we'll actually spend the time and the money to find someone to support them in kind of getting that mentorship. I think maybe that's an angle to go about it, is if, to kind of get rid of that bias internally, is find someone externally who can mentor that person.
And I think we all also need to be extremely self-aware of our own, like we have to do the work of discovering what our biases are and then actually being self-aware enough to overcome them. Something that, again, like none of these are things that you just do at the drop of a hat, but you have to be self-aware enough to then make different decisions about who you decide to mentor and why.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've reached the end of the discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kaylie, Alfred, Bobbie.
Thank you.
I thought this was really interesting. We had a couple of great takeaways from it. Thank you, everyone, for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.